The planet Mars. Planet Mars represents, so in Vedic astrology, each of the planets have karakas or indications. And these indications are sort of in a pure form. And those pure forms take on slightly different flavors depending on where Mars is in your personal Vedic astrology chart. Likewise, wherever Mars is in the sky ends up influencing our ability for action. So the planet Mars literally has to do with karma yoga or action, has to do with the element of fire. It's connected with real estate, landed property. So we look at the strength of Mars in someone's Vedic astrology chart to understand, will they own property? Usually someone has to have a very well-supported Mars or a special relationship with Mars if they're a real estate agent or they own real estate, right? So these are the energies that you can look at, but it also is warrior energy. But what is the ultimate warrior energy? It's actually yoga. Yogic practices are what ancient and modern warriors actually practice. They cultivate the mind and the sharpness of the mind, as well as cultivating the body. So Mars's ultimate sort of strongest energy has to do with the ability to have clear boundaries, say no, cultivate and focus, fiercely focus the mind, and be very clear in action and sometimes in speech. So when Mars is very strong, like when it's in certain constellations like Aries or Capricorn, then it takes on the ultimate qualities of that planet of Mars, either in someone's Vedic astrology chart or when we're experiencing it by transit. The planet Mars orbits the sun once every 2 years. And once in that orbit, it is for two, so it lands, so think of that, 24 months in orbit. So on average, Mars will be in a constellation for 2 months at a time, right? 2 times 12. So on average, if Mars is not retrograding and spending longer in a constellation, it's on average 2 months in a constellation. So when it is strongest, it will be in Capricorn and it will be in Aries to take on those qualities, okay? Now, when Mars is in the constellation Cancer, it is considered weaker. And if Mars has to do with boundaries and also the vigor of the blood, sometimes also Mars can be associated with accidents. So someone with a strong Mars could be a really, really great athlete as well, but they might be prone to injuries depending on the relationship of that Mars with some other planets like Saturn or the eclipses. So if Mars is weak in someone's chart, they might have weaker boundaries. They might not be clear on the yes, no of things or in relationships. They might say yes to something and then go back and regret it and try and renegotiate. And remember, you can always renegotiate, everyone. I do encourage that. But there can be regret and there can be disappointment if Mars is very weak, like when it's in the constellation of Cancer. So it might be 2 months in Capricorn, 2 months in Aries, and 2 months in Cancer. So keep in mind that in the 2-year orbit, when Mars is in Cancer, it will have a weakness. But what is a weak warrior, right? So sometimes Mars in Cancer, these people are peace-loving. So even though they may not have clear boundaries, they actually want everybody to win. They want peace to prevail. It's just that sometimes they may not be totally clear on it. And so there are great benefits, especially if that Mars is supported with a Jupiter or a Saturn or some other planets, that these can often be peace lovers and people who can do great good in the world if Mars is in Cancer. But those boundaries are probably still going to be a little bit mushy. So once every 2 years, the planet Mars goes to the constellation of Cancer. We go back to the beginning of the real estate crash. Remember how I said Mars is the planet of real estate and landed property? It just so happens that the United States was running the Mars cycle. It had just begun a Mars cycle, and Mars was in its weakest place in the constellation of Cancer. The eclipses were also in Capricorn and Cancer, meaning these are the places of drama that stir up social unrest and sometimes greed and misunderstanding of how to use real estate. Like plenty of people bought houses that shouldn't have bought houses. They were overextended. They were taking money out of one house and buying another one, and they didn't really have the money to pay for these things. That was all leading up. That was all 2006, 2007. And when did it hit? Boom. Exactly when Mars was challenged for 2 months, when the eclipses were hitting, and Jupiter was also challenged in the opposite place in Capricorn. That was fall of 2008. And we watched the real estate crash happen through March of 2009 was kind of the bottom of the real estate market, at least in the United States. And that was related to the Mars cycle of the United States. So I wanted everybody to have that perspective, sort of an astrology 101 of the planet Mars. So for those who are in Conscious Calendars and you're a subscriber and you get the free videos, you're going to get an additional video when Mars is in Cancer, when Mars is in Capricorn, and when Mars is in Aries. I'm going to give you some specifics how to work with that energy. I wanted you to have this overview of sort of astrology 101 in the planet Mars. I'm Kathleen M. Whalen, creator of Conscious Calendars, and this is sort of an astrology 101 of the planet Mars. And I'll be sharing probably more information because the planet Mars also is associated with the quality of blood and the element fire.